Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today. Now, John Anthony West has been on my mind the past few days, ever since I learned he was battling cancer, and I made this video a few nights ago, and if you haven't checked that out, I'll leave a link below, but it gives a link to the John Anthony West project, and it's just a brief 2-minute video. I wanted to mention that, but I have made a few book reviews on my channel before, and I have made a few book recommendations. And I thought I would talk about this today. This is John Anthony West, Serpent in the Sky, and this came out about 2 decades ago, a little over 2 decades ago. And I wanted to talk about this because no other book that I read, and I read this very early in my look into ancient Egypt, and it was the most important book I've read as far as looking into what happened in what we call Egypt today a long, long time ago. And after I read this, I realized that I would have to toss out every present-day concept of how we look at art and language and religion and just totally eliminate that from my mind when looking into ancient Egypt. That was the most important thing probably I learned about how to look at what the ancient Egyptians, how they lived their life and how they represented their life and their art and their monuments and stuff. So I just wanted to mention that. But I just want to read a little bit from John Anthony West's book here, where he talks about magic and symbolic art. And he starts talking about how we view magic today. It says, "To us, of course, the provision of such nourishment is magic, and our education, based as it is upon materialistic Victorian conceits, instills in our mind the notion that magic is a synonym for superstition. Schwaller-de-Lubitsch defines magic as a manipulation of harmonic forces which may lie outside sensory perception and are therefore beyond the pale of possible measurement. We live, even today, in a magical world. Art is magic. Its effects cannot be measured, and it cannot be comprehended rationally. To some extent, the mythology of art can be measured, broken down into its constituents, harmonies, vibrations, wavelength, and rhythms. But this does not and cannot explain the effect produced, which is magical. A transformation of energy has taken place within us, and only an understanding of the meaning of the numbers that governs the rhythms, wavelengths, and so on can account for these transformations. We eat a potato. Before long, the energy of that potato may be transformed into energy of thought. That, too, is magic. The magic of the netters." And the netters are the creator gods, I guess is the best way to put it. "Our science can take measurements of the quantitative aspects of the phenomenon. The conversion of the potato into thought, or rage, or anger is a fact, but to account for the qualitative aspects of the transformation of energy, science can only fall back on the chicanery of evolutionary jargon. Energy is transformed because organisms that could transform energy had a biological advantage over those who could not. This is an imposition of human thinking upon the putatively blind and accidental forces of nature. Advantage implies goal. According to this theory, there is no goal. The purpose of the prodigious artistic and architectural efforts of Egypt was magical. In the temples, that magic was public, designed to work its transformations upon the individuals making use of the temple. In tombs, the magic was directed at the disembodied soul of the deceased. Who are we to say it was superstition, that it was misguided, that it did not work? Viewed this way, the Egyptian preoccupation with death makes sense, although it is still alien to our own preoccupation, which is not even with life, but with the standards of living. The buildings, statues, and friezes of Egypt were meant to bring both living men and the disembodied souls of the dead into the presence of the netters." Going on here about symbolic art. Finally, we come to symbolism. The whole of Egyptian art is symbolic. We take a symbol to be something that stands without particular precision for something else. In literature, as with Joyce and Virginia Woolf, for example, it is a subjective system of the correspondences that means something to its author and may or may not convey a similar meaning to the readers. We may take a symbol to be an arbitrary device representing a concept or a collection of concepts the American flag, for example. To us, a symbol has no meaning unless we already know what it is supposed to stand for. Then it serves as a kind of sign or shorthand. In Egypt, symbolism was a precise science. We have already touched upon the richly appropriate symbol of the serpent for the dualizing power. All Egyptian symbols and hieroglyphs are similarly profound and appropriate, and it is in the study of Egyptian symbols that we come to appreciate the keen observational powers of the Egyptians. Their symbols are carefully chosen from the natural world, and the chosen symbol is that which best expresses or embodies within it a function or principle. A symbol thus chosen represents that function or principle on all levels simultaneously, from the simplest, most obvious physical manifestation of that function to the most abstract and metaphysical. Unfortunately, the symbolism of Egypt, perhaps the single most pervasive and striking feature of its civilization, is also one that which, to us, is least accessible. Even if, following Schwaller de Lubitsch, we are able to penetrate to the inner meaning of the individual symbols, the chances are that few of us will ever be able to read a text as it was meant to be read. The nature of the symbols, with their manifold meanings, is such that they cannot be read in the linear, sequential fashion that we read a book today. They demand that heightened state of consciousness that today some people experience after years of meditative practice, in which the whole is perceived as a whole. Sometimes, if we are lucky, we may experience this with a painting or piece of music. If you know the experience, there is no mistaking it, and you will then know the physiological state required to read an Egyptian text as it must be read, even though you cannot expect to partake of it. But if this direct experience is closed to us, we can still recognize the unattainability of the orthodox view, which sees in Egyptian symbolism nothing but a primitive, cumbersome means of going about things that we go about more easily. The Egyptologist, like a good child of the 18th century, believes in the credo of facility. A mathematics that is easier is automatically better. An alphabet that allows everyone to write whatever he wants is better than a hieroglyphic system that requires years of training. We are so used to accepting increased facility as a synonym for progress that we never question it. It is, however, an arbitrary value judgment. When we look into Egypt and find certain aspects of their civilization unwieldy, conservative, or unnecessarily primitive, we must always remember that their values were not ours. Invariably, when we look closely at their methods, we can see that, given their aims, the refusal to give up their cumbersome methods to develop an alphabet or a more advanced technology was deliberate and based upon a deeper understanding of human nature and of human destiny than we possess. And that is a little bit of John Anthony West's book, The Serpent in the Sky. There was no book that I have ever read that had a greater effect on me as far as how to view this ancient civilization in what we call Egypt today. Hope you thought this was interesting. Please check out the video that I mentioned at the beginning here, John Anthony West's New Battle, and I hope you all have a nice day.